Have you ever played a game where the only person there was you? No objectives, no enemies, just you. And somehow, in that total silence, it was enough. To me, one of those games was Garry's Mod, not the viral multiplayer chaos you see on YouTube, but a quiet physics sandbox where the only thing to guide you was your own imagination. I remembered early days before the Steam Workshop when we had to constantly look for mods on garrysmod.org, or those times I'd spent hours mindlessly one-tapping Dr. Klein, or even detonating various bombs in GM Big City to see those different explosions. But then there were the other moments, wandering into maps like GM Shambles with that eeriness and the sewer section that always gave me the creeps. It was a space where I could do things I couldn't do anywhere else. That spark of having all the time in the world to just imagine. And yeah, I know Gmod is famous for its multiplayer, but its single player gave me something quieter. Because when you're the only one left in that sandbox, the only limit the game has is you. I first heard of Garry's Mod through the legends who mastered it. Videos like Das Bullshit's The Gmod Idiot Box, Kirio706's Team Fabulous 2, and Raikujo's Who's Cooking Tonight. These weren't just funny random videos I found online, as they made me grow more attached with Valve's characters, so I wanted to be in a world where I could basically do whatever I wanted with them. And as a kid, that concept absolutely hooked me. The first time I booted up the game, I was met with two classic choices, GM Flatgrass or GM Construct. Naturally, I picked the one with more stuff in it. I remember the loading screen, the excitement of finally getting to make cool shit happen, but when I actually spawned in, it felt less like a playground and more like a ghost town. The UI was overwhelming, the sheer amount of options was too much for my tiny brain to process. It was confusing, empty, and yet strangely peaceful. Instead of making cool shit happen, I just started wondering. I explored every corner of the map until I eventually found the courage to start spawning props and ragdolls just to fling them around with a physics gun. I would drive the Half-Life 2 buggy around the edges, or spend way too long shooting Combine NPCs. It was simple. The game never demanded a single thing from me, and for a kid, that freedom scratched an itch I didn't even know I had. Garry's Mod became my sanctuary every single day after school. As the loop continued, I moved onto the toolgun. I remember reading through the descriptions like they were the blueprints for the mess I wanted to make. The first time I used the weld tool, it felt like I was discovering actual super loot. Soon I was tethering balloons to ragdolls to watch them drift away. I'd even set up cameras for a more cinematic angle before blowing everything up with a rocket launcher. It was perfect. You could argue Minecraft offered the same freedom at the time, but to me, Gmod had an edge, ease, and assets. Having almost every Valve model with only a click away in the source engine to boot felt like cheating. Then I discovered mods. This was back when you had to manually drag folders inside of Gmod itself, a process that's a million times easier now with the Steam Workshop, but at the time that extra effort made the payoff feel earned. I realized that what started as a bare-bone game with only 2 maps was about to become a glorious, chaotic mess. And even if I was the only one there to witness it all, it felt whole. Garry's Mod was enough to fuel my imagination with just the bare-bone assets, but once I realized I could do anything, props, ragdolls, entities, mods, what kind of kid wouldn't want to dive into a ball pit that huge? But that freedom came at a cost. What started as a small installation slowly turned my hard drive into a dedicated sweatshop for add-ons. Back in 2013, I couldn't afford an SSD, so I pretty much lived in the loading screens. At first, the map took as long as a bathroom break. Then suddenly it was long enough to grab food. And eventually it was long enough to wash the damn dishes. The wait basically became part of the experience. And what made the wait worth it? Well, for a kid that was raised in Call of Duty's peak, it started with the weapons. M9K was the gold standard until I found FAS 2.0. Oh my sweet beloved. I'd spent hours gunning down Combine and zombies, and since I didn't want to look like a generic Half-Life 2 NPC while doing it, I used the SAS in COD 4 as my player mod, and oh my god. Heck, I even threw in the bullet time mod after watching The Matrix, and suddenly, I wasn't just shooting these NPCs, no. I was directing my movie. It became a Fortnite collab that I controlled. 1 minute it was military tanks and aircraft taking over the map. The next it was Star Wars, proving that lightsabers were completely overpowered. I also added cars to drive around with, UI and HUD mods to make Gmod look sleek, and a mountain of other fun and wacky workshop items that I still want to thank the creators for today. Most of this happened in GM Big City alone, but eventually I needed more flavor. I started downloading maps that were absolute units, almost a gig for a single location. Spooky maps, racing maps, city maps to explode and nuke. And those, I don't even know what I downloaded maps that gave me experiences I'll never forget. The momentum was quite unstoppable, probably even a bit alarming. I was adding NPCs left and right, like World War II vets, or even clone troopers, maybe even dinosaurs, and SCPs.
I don't like this. I really don't.
Some were cool, some were pure brain rot, and some would give me a goddamn heart attack as they chased me throughout the whole map. With every new NPC, a new scenario played out in my head. A zombie outbreak where I'm the lone survivor. Boom! A massive battlefield where I respawn as a new soldier every time I die. Boom! Staging a crime scene, fighting off the cops, and nuking the city when I finally get overwhelmed. Or just playing God, spawning waves of enemies against a small group of defenders just to see who survives. Boom. This random bullshit was therapeutic. And to an outsider, it probably looked bloated and messy, but to me, it was everything. Until it wasn't. Eventually, the constant chaos started to feel a bit numb. Instead of spawning the next explosion, I just stopped. I looked around at the mess I made. I wasn't exactly tired of it, it just felt different. I started to realize that with everything available at the press of a button, sometimes not pressing it brought a new kind of life to these worlds. I didn't feel lonely without the NPCs, since a new kind of calmness grew. I guess these worlds didn't need a constant supply of random bullshit to be meaningful. And as a kid, the moments where I didn't create such a mess became the most grounded. As peace untouched by chaos breathed new life, a place where being alone with nothing never felt lonely. I'll be honest, this game is oddly comforting, but in an eerie way. When I'm doing absolutely nothing, none of that shooting stuff or spawning different NPCs, but just immersing myself in the map. I start to realize how calm it all is, and as a kid, this feeling really got to me. It was completely aimless, yet somewhat purposeful, hidden in all these quiet corners. And growing up, I was no stranger to playing alone. I'd set up grand battles with my toys, fighting over territory, or even sacrificing themselves to save their allies. It made the transition to Garry's Mod feel natural. But those plastic toys couldn't give me this. The freedom to roam, to explore, just to be alone with my own thoughts. Without adding anything new, the game transformed. It was just me, wandering through the silence of it all. The chaos I used to spawn became a faint memory. It was as if the maps were hinting that they used to be loud, now turned quiet. And the more I explored in peace, the more the noise of the past started to fade, and my mind started to wander further. Because I was realizing that I'm in control of my own pace. GM Big City is the map that I've played the most, and yet most of it I only do my dumb shit in two places. The big open space of the spawn area and the long roads near the sewage facility, and I didn't much explore anywhere else. But when I stopped messing around and let the quiet sink in, the map began to sort of sing. It's a massive city, and yet there's only the deafening silence of time and the occasional echoing siren with no clear source. And to be honest, it was creepy as shit. But stepping further into that silence, I realized it was a privilege just to exist there. I started discovering secrets, hidden rooms, and definitely some gruesome stuff. It creeped me out, sure, but
You talking to me?
it also fueled my imagination in a way the explosions, the shooting, and the fooling around never could. I do know that millions of people have explored these maps on their own, but doing it by myself felt meaningful. I was noticing details I'd missed during years of my dumbass shooting around. And these worlds didn't need the mess. They didn't demand anything from me. The emptiness wasn't something that needed to be filled, because the act of exploring it was the experience. And because nothing was ever demanded of me, my mind finally had the space it didn't know it was looking for. With all the power that freedom gives, what more can it offer when it exists nowhere else? I have a library of favorites that carry a hint of the freedom Gmod gave me. Currently, I am surviving day to day in Project Zomboid with my partner, and we can do almost anything. But we're always pushed forward by the sheer will to survive because of the numerous hordes of zombies that are constant looming threat. Then there's Baldur's Gate 3. It gives you incredible agency over your path, your build, and your morality. But it's still bound by chapters and quests. There's always an ending to reach. And even, I don't know, Outlast Trials, which is an absolute blast to speedrun through after getting traumatized over and over, as it gives me the freedom to finish a map however I want. But it's still a trial. There is still a goal, and if it's not a name, then it ain't it. These games offer different flavors of freedom, but they're a means to an end. PZ has its survival or inevitable death, Baldur's Gate 3 has its story to tell, and Outlast Trials has its escape and graded evaluation. But Garry's Mod? It didn't have those edges. I'd spawn in and there was nothing. No direction, no instructions, and absolutely zero pressure, and as again, I had it all in that one game. Unlike games that demand progression, Gmod let me exist on my own terms, whether it was total random bullshit or a quiet walk to wherever. It only mattered because it mattered to me. I staged battles and imagined scenarios, but the gameplay wasn't in the code. It was all in my head. Maybe it's just the crazy talking, I guess. I get why most games don't do this, as too much freedom is overwhelming. Without a point, most players would tap out from boredom or get lost in the sheer nothingness and overwhelmingness. And that is what made Gmod so special to me as my teenage years go by. I eventually moved on, but I'll never forget the hundreds of hours I spent just doing my own thing. I'm glad Gmod never concerned itself with the feats of other games. It just handed me the tools and did whatever. And maybe that's why those quiet moments in empty maps meant so much to me. Apart from the total bullshit I threw at it, Garry's mod never asked me to do anything. It simply let me exist in the worlds that were already there. Growing up in the province, I had all the room in the world. Open fields, not a single worry in the world, and a backyard that felt infinite. It was the perfect breeding ground for a kid's imagination. But that life didn't last. Eventually, I was pulled away and dropped into the center of a fast-paced, crowded city. Suddenly, the fields were gone. My friends were gone. The freedom to run until I was tired was replaced by the four walls of a boxy apartment. It felt like my imagination had been suffocated. I had no way to express myself and no room to move whatsoever. It was definitely a rough transition. But it became the turning point. I already had a bit of knowledge in the digital space through my mom's old Acer work laptop. Between the lag and the low-spec gaming tutorials I used to watch just to get things to run, that computer became my lifeline. It was a small window into a much bigger world. And through Steam, I found plenty of different games, but none could match the funness I had with Valve's games, like Team Fortress 2, Counter-Strike Source, Portal 2, Half-Life 2, and Left 4 Dead 2. But it wasn't until I stumbled across Garry's mod that everything clicked. It offered me something no other game could, that lost sense of total freedom. In a strange way, it felt like moving back to the province. Call it nostalgia if you want, but Gmod gave my imagination room to breathe again. While my real life was cramped and ever-changing, that sandbox brought back that childlike wonder. It wasn't about the mods, the chaos, or the silence, but it was a place where I could simply exist, even if I was the only person there. I'm in my 20s now. I haven't opened Garry's mod in years, even though it's still comfortably sitting at the top of the Steam charts. But revisiting it for this video reminded me of something. Those hundreds of hours spent wandering empty maps and experimenting with tools weren't meaningless, even if they were completely aimless. I wasn't just messing around with props and NPCs. I was building a world for myself because I desperately needed one. Gmod never tried to be anything more than it was. It didn't give me a story or a quest or a goal, it simply gave me space. And sometimes, space is exactly what we need, even if it's just an empty map and an idea.